Oh, my fault. I was muted. What's the square root of 36? Hmm? 6, right? So 1 second. All right. So this is just 4 and 6. What's the answer? What's 4 times 6? 20 what? That's it. 4. Like that? So okay. So basically, right, the problem that you have here is that it has that radical, right? Square root. So what you want to do, you want to square it to get rid of the radical. But what you do to one side, you gotta do to the other. Just like that, right? So this becomes what? 16n is equal to, what's this? N squared minus 10n plus 25, something like that, right? So remember that this is just the n minus 5 times n minus 5. Then you distribute it, you know, all that good stuff, right? That's how you get that. Anyway, long story short, subtract 16n from here. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. So now what do you have? 0 is equal to n squared minus 26n plus 25. And then after that, what do? Just factor it and just solve for 0. I mean, excuse me, solve for n, right? So this is what? N minus 25, n minus 1, right? Set both of those equal to 0. You have n minus 25 is equal to 0. N minus 1 is equal to 0. Add 25, add 25. N is equal to 25. Add 1, right? N is equal to 1. And that's it. Really? Got you. All right. Hold on one second. Wait, hold on one second. You said the real number is what? Oh, you saying that's like blank plus blank I, something like that? Like this? Yeah. So square root of negative 16 is what? Mhm. Mhm. What is it? No. We did this yesterday. What is that? You're close. No. No. Square root of negative 16. What's that? We did it yesterday. Mhm. It's for what? For I. Right? So that's it. That's your answer. Yeah. So the one is incorrect. Remember, that's possible because we're supposed to check our answers, right? Yeah. For I. So maybe you don't need to type in I with it.
So if that's the answer,
So like you're gonna get like two answers, right? You have an A and a B. So the A part just goes here and the B part just goes here. So it's
Can you do that one? Just.
so -2 plus 4i over 3 minus 2i, right?
Thank you.
So, yeah, I can see. So what do we want to do, right? To solve this, we have to multiply by something. Let y'all think about it real quick. 1 second. Yeah, so look, you have the B part, right? So what's A gonna be? What number is A? 2? Mm-mm. No. We did yesterday. What's A? So guess, what do you think A is? If B is 4, what do you think A is? What? 2. No. There's only one number it could possibly be. What do you think? So like I'm saying that you have blank plus 4i is equal to 4i. So what you gonna put in that space there? Think about it. Blank plus 4i is equal to 4i. What you gonna put there? It's not 1. What you gonna put there? What could I put here to add to 4i to get just plain 4i? That'll give me 5i. What number could I put here? Think about it. There's one number that could go there. No. It's like you're jumping over the right answer, like you're going left and right. Something in the middle of what you're saying. You're jumping over it again. No. What could go there? No, where the blank is, right here. What number could I plug there to get 4i as an answer? Yeah. 0. 0, that's it. That's it. All right. Oh, wait. Let me do this one, then I take this. So look, we got -2 plus 4i over 3 minus 2i, right? Remember that it's illegal for me to have i's in my denominator, right? So to get rid of it, I have to multiply by the conjugate, right? So what's the conjugate of this in the denominator? Exactly, 3 plus 2i. And what I do to the bottom, I do to the top, right? And then after that, just distribute, combine like terms, all that good stuff, right? Top and bottom. So for the top, I'm going to have -6. What's this? Minus 4i plus 12i plus 8i squared, all divided by 3 times 3 is 9, right? So I'm doing the bottom now. 3 times 3 is 9 plus 6i minus 6i, all right? Minus 4i squared, right? Now, let's take care of those exponents that we have there. So I have -6 minus 4i plus 12i plus 8 times -1, right? Because remember that I squared is equal to -1. And on the bottom, I have 9 plus 6i minus 6i minus 4 times -1, right? Now let's do our multiplication, right? So I have -6 minus 4i plus 12i minus 8, all divided by 9 plus 6i minus 6i, and something negative is positive, plus 4, right? Now let's combine like terms, right? Top and bottom. So -6 minus 8, what's that? 14, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, -14, you're right. And then -4 plus 12, what's that? That's like 8, I think. So 8i, right? On the bottom, negative 6i and positive 6i will cancel out. 9 plus 4, I think that's like what, 13 maybe? Yeah. So then that's my answer right there. So for a plus bi form, right? Just scroll down a little bit. So for a plus bi form, I would have to write this as negative 14 over 13 plus 8 over 13i, right? So that's A, and then that's B. That's it. Hmm? Yeah. Try it. Let's see. Yeah. So that's one of the questions. Yeah. Yeah. Over 13 and 8 over 13. Mhm. Okay, not yet, not yet. It didn't work? Really? I wonder what that is.
I got negative 16, um, AI over 16.
Right.
I didn't know, but I did try.
That should be right. Let me see.
So I got the answers for all the other ones, but I just don't know how to enter it there.
They could be online.
Where's everybody?
Well, maybe they're still coming or online today. Worked for me though.
How? Oh, because you entered like so. Oh,
Like the whole fraction, yeah. All right. What's up? Oh yeah. My fault. 1 second, 1 second. You're welcome. Wait, give me 1 second. I gotta like make it small. Mm-hmm.
so for the test, they're like,
Plus 8i over 13. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's another one. Yeah, go ahead. Oh no, no, no. All right, you're up. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. 35. 25. Like that. So what's the square root of negative 64? What's that? 8 what? Right? 8i, very good. And then what's the square root of negative 25? 5i, right? And then we're just gonna multiply them, right? So 8 times 5 is what? 40, 40i squared, very good. And then we remember I squared is equal to what? -1, right? So this is just 40 times -1, which is equal to, what's that? Exactly. And that's it, that's your answer. That's all. Just remember, switch to i's first, and then do your multiplication. All right? Yeah, so switch it to imaginary first, and then do your multiplication. Because if you do it the old way, where you just multiply the radicands together, right? You might be tempted to say, oh, that's negative 64 times negative 25 is going to give me a positive something answer, right? But that's not right. You know? Right, like simplify them and then multiply them. Yeah. Mhm. 5/7. square root of 5, like that. Mhm. Over 2. Square root of 20. Okay. So long story short, right? I gotta have the same radicals in order to add these, right? So I gotta simplify that square root of 20. So this stays the same, 5 over 7 square root 5 plus 1 over 2. Square root 20, what does that become? Square root what times what? 4 times 5, right? And the square root of 4 is 2, right? So this is 5 over 7 square root 5 plus 1 over 2, 2 square root 5, right? When we multiply these together, this is just going to cancel out, right? So I have what, 5 over 7 square root 5 plus square root 5, right? So what does that become? That becomes basically just 5 over 7 plus 1 over 1 square root 5. And then you remember, in order for me to add, I got to have the same denominator. So I multiply this by 7. But what I do to the bottom, I got to do to the top, right? So I have what? 5 plus 7 over 7 square root 5. And then what is that? That's like 10. What's that, like 12 maybe? Yeah, so 12 over 7 square root 5. That'll be it. Sure. Mm-hmm. It's not 12. What is it? Yeah. For this part right here? Yeah, 7 over 7, yeah. It's actually 1 over 1, and I'm multiplying the top and the bottom by 7 to get the same denominator so that I can add. Let me get her a question real quick. What's your question? X plus 5, 8, right? So the issue with this question, right, is that we have a radical. So to undo the radical, right, I want to square it. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do the other side of the equation. So now what do I have? X plus 5 is equal to 8 squared, which is 64, right? After that, you subtract 5 from both sides, right, to get x by itself. So then I have x is equal to, is it 59? Yeah. And that's it. That's all it is. So, which one was that?
There is 4
Huh?
square root n equal n.
We just did that actually.
Oh, you did? Can I do that? And there's one more. It's pretty much the same.
That's it right there.
But it asks for one answer.
So one of those are right. Test it. Plug them in and see which one is right.
Like this.
Remember I told you that sometimes one answer could be wrong? So you got to test it and check it.
Okay, yeah, I got stuck here.
Mm-hmm.
You explain. But how I know both sides that this is 25 from
So I need two numbers that when I multiply them, give me a positive 25, but when I add them together, give me a negative 26. But speaking of that though, we gonna do something today, man. That is type complicated, I'm not gonna lie.
No, I don't think that.
All right,
It's very
I'll
10,
get you next, all right? Square root 10,
minus x, no, negative x,
okay.
all under this.
Oh, like this?
Yeah.
Okay,
Now, so it will be positive x
on the side?
outside.
That's it, okay. Oh, like, you mean like adding it, like plus X?
Outside
Uh-huh,
equal.
all right. So for this, right, I would subtract X from over here. I do to one side, do to the other. So I have what? Square root 10 minus X is equal to negative X minus 2. And then now the issue that I got here is that radical, right? So I want to get rid of the radical. So how do I do that? I'm going to square it, right? I'm going to raise it to the power of the index. But here's the thing though, when I do the one side of the equation, I do the other side of the equation. So now what do I have? I have 10 minus X, right? Because these two cancel out, is equal to, what's that? X squared minus minus 4x, right? And then plus 4, something like that. Feel like that's it. Yeah. Might be something like this. Yeah, I feel like it's like this. It's this negative that I'm looking at here. That's what I'm thinking about. Yeah. All right, 1 second. Hold up. Just to be safe. Negative x minus 2 times negative x minus 2, right? I'm going to FOIL it. So negative x times negative x is positive x squared. Negative x times negative 2 is going to give me a positive 2x. Negative 2 times negative x is going to give me a positive 2x. And negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. So this is x squared plus 4x plus 4. All right, just to be sure. All right. Anyway, long story short now, I'm trying to solve for x, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to subtract 10 from here. What I do to one side, I do to the other. I want to add x from over here. What I do to one side, I got to do to the other, right? So now what do I have? 0 is equal to x squared plus 5x minus 6, right? Now, I need two numbers, right, that when I multiply them together will give me a negative 6, but when I add them together will give me a positive 5. What are they? 3 and 5? Let me see. That doesn't add to positive 5. 3 and 5? That's it. All right, plus 6 and minus 1. All right? 6 times negative 1, negative 6. 6 plus negative 1, positive 5. All right? And what are we going to do after that? Set both of these equal to 0. X plus 6 equals 0. X minus 1 equals 0. Solve for x. I'm going to subtract 6 from over here. What I do to one side, do to the other. So x is equal to negative 6. I'm going to add 1 over here. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So x is equal to 1. And then that's it. You got your two answers. Right? Then, got you. All right. Remember to test them though, because you don't know if they're both gonna work. All right, what's your question? Mhm. So square root of 16. Negative 16. The square root of 16 times negative 16.
No.
Erase the first one. Okay. So like this.
Yeah.
That's it. All right. So what's the square root of negative 16? For what? For I, right? And then what's the square root of negative 64? 8i, right? And then after that, you just multiply it. What's 4i times 8i? 32i squared. And then I squared we know is negative 1, right? So this is just negative 32. That's it. Okay. Awesome. All right. I'll take one more. Go ahead. To the fourth power. To the fourth power. To the fifth power. Negative 3 power. Third. To the fourth. To the fifth. Second. Around where? Okay. 3 power. So what you want to do, right? Simplify the inside first, then worry about the power on the outside, right? So I want to simplify my x's first. Before I do that, right? I want to consolidate like the kind of combine like terms, so to speak, in the numerator and in the denominator, and then I'll do the division, right? So x to the fourth times x to the negative 3 becomes what? No, say it again. It's x, right? Because whenever we multiply powers, we add them, right? So 4 plus negative 3 is just plain x, right? So now I have just x. And I still have the y to the 4, z to the 5. That doesn't change, right? Now I'm looking at the denominator, right? The bottom numbers. So again, I want to consolidate it, combine like terms, so to speak, right? So what's that going to become? The denominator. Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. All right. And then we have our negative 3 on the outside, right? So now what I want to do is I want to divide them, right? So whenever we divide our exponents, we subtract their powers, right? So what is the x going to become? Top minus bottom. X to the negative 2, very good. Hmm. 1 minus 3, negative 2. Yeah, yeah, top minus bottom. So what about y? Y to the close. Top minus bottom. Close. Negative 2, right? Because it's y to the 4 minus 6. 4 minus 6 is negative 2. What about the z? Hmm? Yeah, they cancel out. I'll take that. It'd be 0. 5 minus 5, 0. But anything to the 0 power is 1. So yeah, you're right. Yeah. And then we have our negative 3 on the outside here, right? Now, whenever I, what? Hmm? It doesn't matter. Like, think of it as it's gone. It's 1. Yeah. Yeah. So now, right? whenever I raise a power to a power, multiply, right? So this is gonna become what? X to the negative 2 power raised to the negative 3 times y to the negative 2 power raised to negative 3. So then we're just gonna multiply them, right? So what is this? X to the what? To the 6 and y to the, exactly. And then that's it. That's your answer. Hmm? Yeah. If it's some type of question that's like, oh, give me the powers of like the X, the Y, and the Z kind of thing, right? The Z's power would be 0 if it's like not there. Yeah. Yeah.
See, the ASC.
Add the 2 over first and then the square. Oh, I see. And then you subtracted it back. I got you. So yeah, so combine like terms. So that's x squared minus 25 0. Solve for x.
X squared minus 25.
Equals 0. Solve for x.
So it's not AC.
I mean, if you want to, you could use it.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, my fault. Did you get to see it? Yeah, so A would be like 1 and B would be like 0. C would be like negative 25.
We
Yeah.
have. Okay.
So, you know what I'm saying? If you want to use the AC method, you could. You know? So A would be 1, right? Oh, no, I'm sorry. So A times C, negative 25, right? And B is 0, right? So you want two numbers that multiply to negative 25 to add up to 0. Mhm.
That's A.
Oh no. I don't know. Let's do it after class.
After.
Yeah. All right, let's look at what we're gonna get into for today. But before we do that, help me out a little bit. Want to do a little blast from the past real quick? How I solve this? The perfect square, right? So what's the perfect square? It's not a perfect square. All right, now we're talking. So square root 64, square root 2, and then the square root of 64 is, all right, so this is 8, square root 2. That's our answer for here. All right, not bad, not bad, not bad. All right, help me out with this one. How do I do this again? Okay. Say it again. Say it again. Exactly, right? So what am I gonna do? Right, times square root 5, right? What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So I have to rationalize the denominator because it's illegal for me to have radicals in my denominator. Multiply straight across, what do I get? It's 32 times 5. 160, all right, so square root of 160 divided by square root of 25, good. And the square root of 25 is 5. Very good. So this is square root 160 over 5. Well, hold up. Can I simplify square root of 160? Isn't there a perfect square that goes into that? What is it? Not 80. No. That's what I'm talking about right there, right? So this becomes, I'm gonna just put it on the bottom, right? This becomes square root 16 times square root 10, right? Over 5, and the square root of 16 is 4, right? So 4 square root 10 over 5. That's my answer. Right? Not bad, not bad, not bad. 10's not a perfect square. Yeah. All right, not bad, not bad, not bad. All right, huge blast from the past right now. Big deal right now. How do I do this? I gotta factor it. How do we factor this? Right. 8, right? We're gonna do the AC method, right? 8 times C is 9 times 4, which is equal to what? 36. And my B is what? Negative 12. So now I need two numbers, and when I multiply them, will give me a positive 36. But when I add them together, it'll give me a negative 12. What are they? Exactly, right? So negative 6 times negative 6, positive 36, and negative 6 plus negative 6, negative 12, right? So now remember, when I get these two numbers, I'm going to rewrite my original question. So I have 9x squared, but instead of the negative 12x, I'm going to write negative 6x minus 6x plus 4, right? Those are the two numbers that I just found. And then we want to group them, right? So we have a left-hand group and a right-hand group. In my left-hand group, what's the greatest common factor there? 3x, very good. And what's left over? What else? Minus 2, right? Now, in the right-hand group, what's my greatest common factor there? Close. Negative 2, right? Because the sign of my leading term is the sign of my factor, right? And then what's left over? Right. And then after that, the greatest common factor one more time. I have the 3x minus 2. And then what's left out in the outside? 3x minus 2. So remember this, right? Awesome. I got you. All right, so let's look at what we're getting into. That joint stay being complicated, right? So quadratic equation is an equation of the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, where a does not equal 0. Quadratic equations differ from linear equations by including a quadratic term, with the variable raised to the second power of the form ax squared. We use different methods to solve quadratic equations like linear equations. We use different methods to solve quadratic equations than linear equations because just adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing terms will not isolate the variable. We have seen that some quadratic equations can be solved by factoring. In this chapter, we will learn 3 other methods to use in case a quadratic equation cannot be factored. Yay! Fun stuff, right? And these methods work for everything. So if you didn't like doing factoring before, you didn't like the AC method and all that, I got you. We're about to flip the script right now. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to solve quadratic equations of the form ax squared is equal to k using the square root property, right? This was your question earlier, right? So we have already solved some quadratic equations by factoring. Let's review how we use factoring to solve the quadratic equation x squared is equal to 9, right? So if I have x squared is equal to 9, I'm going to subtract the 9, bring it on to the other side. So I have x squared minus 9 is equal to 0. And you remember that's the difference of two perfect squares, right? So that gives me the x minus 3, x plus 3 is equal to 0. And then you have x minus 3 is equal to 0, x plus 3 is equal to 0. And then that gives you x equals 3, x equals negative 3, right? Little blast from the past. Remember that. So, in a second. All right. So we can easily use factoring to find the solutions of similar equations like x squared is equal to 16 and x squared is equal to 25. There you go, that's yours, right? Because 16 and 25 are perfect squares in each case, we would get two solutions, x equals 4, x equals negative 4, and x equals 5 and x equals negative 5. But what happens when we have an equation like x squared is equal to 7? Since 7 is not a perfect square, we cannot solve the equation by factoring. Previously, we learned that since 169 is the square of 13, we can also say that 13 is a square root of 169. Also, this is what you were saying earlier, right? Negative 13 squared is equal to 169, so negative 13 is also a square root of 169. Therefore, both 13 and negative 13 are square roots of 169. So every positive number has two square roots, one positive, one negative. We earlier defined the square root of a number in this way. If n squared is equal to m, then n is the square root of m, right? Since these equations are all of the form x squared is equal to k, the square root definition tells us the solutions are the two square roots of k. This leads us to the square root property, all right? So we about to make life real nice and simple right now, going forward. All right. So the square root property, this is it right here. This is the sauce. So if x squared is equal to k, then x is equal to the square root of k, or x is equal to negative square root of k, or x is equal to plus or minus the square root of k. All right. Just building the vocabulary a little bit. All right. All right, so notice that the square root property gives two solutions to an equation of the form x squared is equal to k, the principal square root of k and its opposite. We could also write the solution as x is equal to plus or minus the square root of k. We read this as x equals positive or negative the square root of k. Now, we will solve the equation x squared is equal to 9 again, this time using the square root property. All right, so take a look. It's going to change the game. This is way, 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 way simpler. Way simpler. All right, check this out. All right. So I have x squared is equal to 9, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to square root both sides, right? So when I square root both sides, I get x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 9, which is plus or minus 3. So x equals 3. And x equals negative 3. That's the square root property. 3 steps. That's all it is. All right? Easy peasy. All right? And the reason why we're doing this is so we can answer questions like this, right? All right, so what happens when the constant is not a perfect square? Let's use the square root property to solve the equation x squared is equal to 7. All right? That's exactly what you think it is. All right? We'll solve that in like one step, right? X squared is equal to 7. So using the square root property, right? You're going to have x is equal to square root of 7 and x is equal to negative square root of 7. That's it, right? Real nice and simple. So let's say I have a question like this, for example, right? I have x squared minus 50 is equal to 0, right? So here's how I'm gonna solve this. X squared minus 50 is equal to 0. Real simple. I'm gonna add 50 over here to get rid of it, and what I do to one side, I do to the other. Add 50 over here. So now what do I have? I have x squared is equal to 50. After that, I want to get rid of that square. So what am I going to do it? I'm going to square root it, right? But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other, right? Now, here's the thing though, right? You have to remember, anytime that you do a square root, right, to a number, you're going to have two answers, a positive number and a negative number, plus or minus, right? And then we have square root 50. Now, square root 50 could get broken down a little bit, right? Just a little bit. I think we could break that down into, what's that, square root 25 times 2? Something like that. And then the square root of 25, I think, is just 5. So plus or minus 5 square root 2. So those are my answers right there, right? I have x is equal to negative 5 square root 2, and x is equal to positive 5 square root 2. And that's it. Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
How would I put?
Oh, you put a comma, like 5 comma negative 5, like that. 5, yeah. All right, not bad, right? You're welcome. And then, of course, you should check your answers, blah, 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 all that good stuff, right? You guys try. You good? You got the answer? All right, let's try this out, right? I want to add 48 over here. But what I do to one side of the equation, I got to do to the other side of the equation. I'm going to add 48 over here. So now what do I have? I have x squared is equal to positive 48. But I'm not done. I want to get x by itself. So I'm going to get rid of that square. To get rid of the square, I'm going to square root it. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation, right? So now what do I have? X is equal to, remember, plus or minus. Anytime you square root a number, you're going to have two answers, a positive answer and a negative answer, right? So now I have square root of 48. But I think 48 could get broken down a little bit, right? What is that? 16 and 3, right? So this equals plus or minus square root 16 times 3. And the square root of 16 is 4, right? So this is plus or minus 4 square root 3. If you want to give me this, I'll take this. But if you want to be more simple, you could say x is equal to negative 4 square root 3. and x is equal to 4 square root 3. Maybe, I don't know. Sure. Same old, same old. I'll take any one of those that you want to give me. All right. So that's that. Any questions on that? Are we all good? Good? All right. So real quick, let me just give y'all some notes real quick. It's a procedure how we do this. All right. So to solve a quadratic equation using the square root property, step 1, isolate the quadratic term and make its coefficient 1, right? Step 2, use the square root property. Step 3, simplify the radical. Step 4, check your solution, right? So check your solution, is just plug it in, make sure that it works, all that good stuff. All right. Let's try another one. Now that we got the instructions. So help me out. How do I do this? What should I do first? Divide by 3. I like that. All right. Divide by 3. All right. I do the one side, do it to the other. So what do I have? Z squared is equal to, what is that? 36. Okay. And then now I want to get Z by itself. So how do I do that? Square root. All right. I'm going to square root both sides. So I do the one side, it's the other. So now I have Z is equal to what? Plus or minus 6. Excellent. That's what I'm talking about. And that's it, right? If you told me that Z was equal to -6 and Z was equal to +6, right? I would take these answers together like that too, right? So whichever you like to do, no problem. What's up? 108 divided by 3. Yeah. So basically, like there was a 3 in front, so we just divide by it. But you know what you do to one side of the equation, you have to do the other side of the equation. That's it. You guys try. right? Your homework's been posted, by the way, in case y'all wanna do it in class, go right ahead. All right. So I wanna solve for x over here, so I'm gonna divide by 2 over here, but what I do to one side, you know I gotta do to the other, right? So what do I have? I have x squared is equal to 49, okay. Right? So what do I do next? What's the operation? What's the operation I'm gonna do? Square root, right? So I'm gonna square root both sides, right? The square and the square root and the square will cancel out, leaving back just x, which is equal to plus or minus what? Very good. Well done. Proud of y'all. Okay. Hmm? Hmm? What does what?
Can I ask you,
Hmm.
does the solution satisfy?
Like, if you plug it in, does it equal what they say it equals? No. So basically, like when we're testing our answers, like we're trying to see if it works or not. All right. Exciting day, exciting day. All right. So the square root property states that if x squared is equal to k, what will happen if k is less than 0? This will be the next case in the next example, right? So let's take a look. Let's take a look. This is going to be really cool. It's for the first time we can answer this, right? So tell me, how do I answer this? What do I do? Very good. I'm going to subtract 72 from over here. What I do to one side, I got to do to the other. And then now I have what? X squared is equal to negative 72. And what do I do after that? All right, I'm going to square root both sides. What I do to one side, do to the other. The square root and the square will cancel out, leaving back just x. And this is going to be equal to what? Plus or minus what? Oh. Perfect square that goes into 72. 36 times 2. Now we're talking, right? So I have a square root of negative 36 times the square root of 2, right? And the square root of negative 36 is what again? 6. No. Nope. Nope. What's square root of negative 36? Nope. 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 Negative 36. What is it? Mhm. Mhm. What is it? There's an answer. Square root of negative 36. What's that? We just did it yesterday. 6i. Now we're talking 6i square root 2. Very good. All right. And then that's my answer. All right. Before we couldn't do that, right? Because we didn't know what imaginary numbers were, but now we do. All right. Huh? Yeah. You guys try. And if you guys finish the practice problem, don't let me keep you from your homework. Go right ahead. Start it. Well, this part. This one just, yeah. Well, no, just, yeah, it cancels. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, no, no, subtract it over and then factor. No, no, yeah. All right, so let's take a look at this real quick, right? So I want to solve for C. So I'm going to subtract 12 from over here. But what I do to one side, you don't have to do to the other. So now I have C squared is equal to negative 12. Now I want to get rid of that square term, right? So to get rid of the square, I'm going to square root it. But it got to be fair. When I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation, square root it, right? So now I have C is equal to plus or minus, right? Could break this down, right? It's going to become what? Square root negative 4 times square root 3. And the square root of negative 4 is what? 2i, right? So 2i square root 3. And then that's it. Any questions on that? Anybody? Which part? Mm-hmm. So the trick that I look for is I'm looking for the largest perfect square that goes into it. In this case, it's negative, it's 4, right? I like to put the negative on the perfect square because I know that the negative is going to come out as an I, right? Yeah. Huh? Perfect square. So I'm talking about like 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, etc., right? Perfect squares. Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's do some more. It's kind of fun, right? Yeah. Let's do some more. By the way, if y'all want to start your homework, go ahead. Right? Yeah. So for this question here, right? I have 2 over 3 u squared plus 5 is equal to 17. What do I do first? Exactly, right? I'm going to subtract 5 from over here. And what I do to one side, I got to do to the other. So now I have 2 over 3 u squared is equal to, what's that, 12? Right? And then now what am I going to do after that? Divide by, what is it? Exactly, divide by 2 over 3. Very good, right? So what I do to one side of the equation, I do to the other side of the equation. Divide by 2 over 3. So now I have what? U squared is equal to, right? Remember, the 12 is like 12 over 1, right? Keep, change, flip. So this becomes what? 12 over 1 times 3 over 2. All right. Now I have to do some tricky stuff here because I'm not as good as math as you guys are. So 2 goes into 2 once and 2 goes into 12 6 times, right? And then we know that 6 times 3 is what? 18, right? So now I have u squared is equal to 18, right? Now I want to get rid of that square, right? So to get rid of the square, I'm going to square root it. But what I do to one side, I got to do to the other, right? So now what do I have? I have u is equal to plus or minus, right? 18 could get broken down into what? Square root 9 times square root 2. And the square root of 9 is what again? 3, right? So 3 square root 2. That's it. We could call it at that. Not bad, right? Even though it's a fraction, right? Fraction is just a number, right? Fraction is just a number. So you just divide by it, and then boom, that's it. Nothing crazy. Yeah. With this one, right? Yeah. The thing is that this is a trick to answer that homework. Yeah. You saw the homework for tonight? Gotcha. I mean, it's light. You can knock it out in class if you want. Mhm.
Oh, not bad. 4.
I mean, y'all know it take me a little while after class for the video upload, so Y'all can stick around and knock it out together if y'all want.
Yeah.
Here, you guys try. So I'm thinking next week, Thursday, my next exam. Still ain't grade the other exam. I'm gonna have that to y'all on Monday though. Oh my gosh, y'all, man. Monday, I'm gonna give it back. Alright. On Thursday, yeah. We should be good by then. Yeah, it's tutoring. There was today, there's tomorrow, and there's Saturday. Online, yeah. 12 to 6. Huh? Friday, yeah. They just make the appointment and then they'll email you the Zoom link. You just go there. You can just do your work. The WC online. Yeah, like just Google BCC and WC, right? And then for BCC and WC online, and then the link will come up, and then you just make the appointment there. Just log in, and then WC online, online. Yeah. And then you guys can pick anybody. You know, like everybody does this class, so anybody that you pick is fine. Yeah. All right, let's take a look. So with this one, right, I want to solve for x. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to subtract this 4 over here, right? So I want to get all my numbers on one side. So, but what I do to one side, I got to do to the other. So now what do I have? 1/2 x squared is equal to 20, right? And then after that, I want to get rid of this half that's in front of the x squared, so I'm just going to divide by half. But what I do to one side, I got to do to the other. So now, what do I have? I have x squared is equal to, remember that this 20 is like 20 over 1, so keep, change, flip. So I'm going to keep the 20 over 1. I'm going to change this to multiplication. I'm going to flip the denominator, so this becomes 2 over 1. Multiply straight across, what do I have? X squared is equal to 40, right? And then, you know, I want to solve for x, so I'm going to square root the square to get rid of it, but what I do to one side, I do to the other. So now I have x is equal to plus or minus, what's this? Square root 4 times square root 10. And the square root of 4 is what again? 2, right? So this is plus or minus 2 square root 10. And then that's my final answer. Questions on this? Anyone? All right. Let's do some more. It's kind of fun. All right, let's take a look at this one. So I got 2x squared minus 8 is equal to 41. What do I do first? Add 8, very good. So I'm going to add 8 over here. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. So now what do I have? I have 2x squared is equal to, I think, what, 49? What do I do after that? Divide by 2, right? So I'm going to divide by 2 over here, but what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation, right? So now what do I have? I have x squared is equal to 49 over 2. And what do I do after that? So I'm going to square root both sides, right? Right? But what I do to one side, I got to do to the other. The square root and the square will cancel out, leaving back just x. So this is equal to what? Plus or minus, right? What's the square root of 49 over 2? What does that become? Say it again? 7 over, you're right, close. 7 over square root 2, right? But remember though, right? It's illegal for me to have radicals in my denominator, right? So I have to rationalize this denominator. How do I do that? Just multiply by square root 2. But what I do to the bottom, I gotta do to the top, right? So now, what does this become? X is equal to plus or minus 7 square root 2 all over just basic 2. Now, I did skip a few steps here, right? Over here, I don't know if everybody saw this, right? Remember that when we have square root, say, of a fraction, we can put the square root individually on the top and on the bottom. So that's what led to the 7 over the square root of 2, right? And also here, when I multiplied straight across, right? The top we knew was 7 square root 2, but also remember that this was square root 4 on the bottom, so that's how I got the positive 2 right there. All right? Questions on this? So long story short, if I get an answer and I have a radical in the denominator, rationalize it. All right? That's it. All right, you guys try it. Sorry about that. Mm-hmm.
Will you be giving, probably next week? You should.
Probably next week. Where? How? How? Yeah. Oh yeah, so log into your account. So click forgot password. Okay. But there's a link that they're gonna email you though. So you have to like make the appointment first with that. That's why. All right, let's take a look at this. All right. So I have 5r squared minus 2 is equal to 34. I want to solve for r, right? So I'm going to add 2 over here. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation. Add 2 over here. So now I have 5r squared is equal to 36, right? And then I want to solve for r, so I'm going to divide by 5. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation, right? Boom. So now I have r squared is equal to 36 over 5. But I want to get rid of that square on the r because I want r by itself. So what am I going to do? I'm going to square root it, right? But what I do to one side, I got to do to the other. So now what do I have? I have r is equal to plus or minus, don't forget that part, what? 6, I heard it, over the square root of 5, right? And then remember, it's illegal for me to have radicals in my denominator, so I have to rationalize its denominator. So to rationalize this, we multiply by square root of 5. But what we do to the bottom, we have to do to the top, right? Square root of 5. By doing this, our final answer is going to be what? R is equal to plus or minus 6 square root 5 all over 5. That's it. Questions on that? Just like a funny way of writing it. Okay. All right. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Got you. Basically, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to push all the numbers on one side and hold a variable on one. And then I want to get rid of the square that's on the variable. And then I'm good to go. All right. This is pretty dope. So let's change gears just a little bit, just a smidge. Just a little bit. All right. So now here's what we want to do. So I want to solve quadratic equations of the form a times x minus h squared is equal to k using the square root property. So we can use the square root property to solve an equation of the form a times x minus h squared equals k as well. Notice that the quadratic term x in the original form ax squared is equal to k is replaced with x minus h, right? So instead of ax squared equals to k, we have a times x minus h squared is equal to k. The first step, like before, is to isolate the term that has the variable squared. In this case, a binomial is being squared. Once the binomial is isolated by dividing each term by the coefficient of a, then the square root property can be used on the x minus h squared, right? So let's take a look. It might look crazy, but it's the same process that we just did. And it's really, really simple. Really, really simple. All right, so check this out, right? I have 4 times y minus 7 squared is equal to 48, right? The first thing I want to do, I want to isolate this, what you call it, binomial term squared, right? So I'm going to divide by 4 over here. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation, right? So now what do I have? I have y minus 7 squared, whoops, y minus 7 squared is equal to, what's that, 12? And then now, what I want to do, I want to get rid of that square. So how do I get rid of the square? I'm going to square root it. But remember, what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation, right? So now what do I have? Y minus 7, right, is equal to plus or minus, and then square root 12 is what? Square root 4 times square root 3, I think. And then we know that the square root of 4 is what, like 2, I think, right? So y minus 7 is equal to plus or minus 2 square root 3, something like that. After that, I just got to add the other number over and I have the answer, right? So I'm going to add 7. Go ahead.
What about the square of
Which square? These two cancel out.
Okay.
Yeah, the square root cancels out the square. So I'm just going to add 7 over here, and what I do to one side, do to the other. So this is my final answer. Y is equal to 7 plus or minus 2 square root 3. That's the final answer, right? You can also write this as y equals 7 minus 2 square root 3 and y equals 7 plus 2 square root 3. So if you want to separate the answers like that, that's fine. Or if you want to put them together with a plus or minus, that's fine as well. All right, go ahead. Because you see how in this question we have a binomial? Well, not here. We have that y minus 7. That's why I have to add the 7 over. So I need that 7 to cancel out, so to speak. You know? And then that's it. So yeah, I would take any one of those two answers. Doesn't matter. Okay. Sure, sure. Let me get one more. Hold on. You're welcome. So not bad, not bad. You guys try. Mhm. Multiplication. All right, let's take a look at this, right? So we have 3 times a minus 3 squared is equal to 54. I want to solve for a, right? So I'm going to push all the numbers onto one side. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to divide this by 3. But what I do to one side, I got to do to the other, right? So now what do I have? I have a minus 3 squared is equal to 54 divided by 3. Now hold up, this 3 going to 54? 18? Got you. All right, so then we have what? A minus 3 squared is equal to 18. All right, not bad. After that, what do we want to do? We want to get rid of that square term, right? So we're going to square root it, but what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. These two will cancel out, leaving back just a minus 3, which is equal to plus or minus, and this should be what? Square root 9 times square root 2. And then the square root of 9 is what again? 3, right? So this becomes a minus 3 is equal to plus or minus 3 square root 2. And then I want to add 3 over here. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So now, final answer. A is equal to 3 plus or minus 3 square root 2. And that's it. Questions on that? Anybody? You all got this answer? Awesome, awesome. All right. So remember, when we take the square root of a fraction, we can take the square root of the numerator and the denominator separately, right? Just a little hint. That being said, let's look at a question like this. All right, so I have x minus 1 over 3 squared is equal to 5 over 9, right? Remember, fractions are just numbers. That's all they are. Fractions are numbers, right? So I want to get rid of this square term. So what am I going to do? All I'm going to do is just square root this side. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation. So now what does this become? X minus 1 over 3 is equal to, very simply, plus or minus, right? This is going to become what? Square root 5 over square root 9. Now somebody help me. Square root of 9 is what again? 3, right? So this becomes x minus 1 over 3 is equal to plus or minus square root 5 over 3. After that, I want to get rid of the 1 over 3. So I'm going to add 1 over 3 over here to get rid of it. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation, add 1 over 3. So what's my final answer? X is equal to 1 over 3 plus or minus square root 5 over 3. And that's it. Questions on that? So same process, right? But don't be scared because it's a fraction. Fractions are just numbers, and we treat them the same way. All right?
Alright, so let's say the fraction got
Radicals. Say again. You have an upper two.
a
Like I was squaring the fraction.
You was going with the fractions.
Yeah,
You gotta.
that's perfect. So now you can reduce this, right, to like what, 2/3 or something, and then just square it. So that'd be like 4/9 or something. All right. Not bad, not bad. You guys try. Like I said, if you finish the practice problems early, start on the homework. All right, let's take a look. All right. So I want to get rid of this square term right here, right? So to get rid of the square term, I'm going to square root it. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do the other side of the equation. So now what do I have? X minus 1/2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5 over the square root of 4. And we know we could simplify that down to be x minus 1/2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5/2. And then I want to get rid of that half, so I'm going to add 1/2 over here. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So what's my final answer? X is equal to 1 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. All right, final answer. Any questions on that? All right, go ahead. So yeah, web work might have like a ABC situation going on, you know. You just type that in. You're good to go. So if they do like an ABC, like this question, excuse me. Oops. They might ask you like, what is A plus B square root 5, something like that, right? And then A would just be 1 over 2, and B would just be 1 over 2, something like that. Yeah. So we will start the solution to the next example by isolating the binomial term, right? Kind of the same thing we've been doing. So a tad bit disappointing, but not too bad. So look at this, right? I have 2 times x minus 2 squared plus 3 is equal to 57, right? What am I going to do first? Exactly. I'm going to subtract 3. Very good. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other, right? So now I have 2 open parentheses, x minus 2 squared is equal to, what's that? 54, I think. Yeah. And then after that, what do I do next? Divide by 2, right? I'm going to divide by 2 over here. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do the other side of the equation. So now, what do I have? I don't know what just happened there. So divide by 2, divide by 2. So now what do I have? X minus 2 squared is equal to, what's that? 25, 26, 27, I think. All right? Something like that. And now I want to solve for x, right? So I want to get rid of that square term. So I'm going to square root this. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now what do I have? I have x minus 2, because these two cancel out, is equal to plus or minus, what's this? The square root of 9 times the square root of 3. And the square root of 9 is, what, 3, right? So this becomes x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus 3 square root 3. And then again, I want x by itself. So I'm going to add this 2 over here to get rid of it. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now, final answer. X is equal to 2 plus or minus 3 square root 3. And that's my final answer right there. Questions on that? Any questions on this? Or are we good? Good? All right. Hmm? Yeah. The 54 divided by 2. You guys try.
It's possible for this to be negative, so when it comes here, it's multiplied or not.
Mhm. It's gonna be positive 5. You did that right. You did. All right, let's take a look. So in this situation, I want to solve for A, right? So I want to push all the numbers to one side, leave A by itself. So I'm going to subtract 4 from over here. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation. So now what do I have? I have 5 times A minus 5 squared is equal to, what's that, 100? And then I want to divide by 5. Oops, divide by 5. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other side of the equation. So now what do I have? I have A minus 5 squared is equal to, what's this, like 20 or something like that? Yeah. And then after that, I want to get rid of that square term, right? So I'm going to square root this. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now I have what? A minus 5 is equal to plus or minus, what's this? Square root 4 times square root 5, something like that. And then after that, I should have A minus 5 is equal to plus or minus 2 square root 5. And then all you have to do is just move that 5 over. So I'm going to add 5 over here. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So final answer, A is equal to 5 plus or minus 2 square root 5. Everybody got that? Any questions? Anybody got any questions or y'all good? Good? So sometimes the solutions are complex numbers, right? That can happen from time to time. So for example, right? Let's say I have this question right here. So I have 2x minus 3 squared is equal to negative 12, right? First things first, I want to get rid of that square, right? So I'm going to square root it. But what I do to one side, you know I have to do to the other. So now what does this become? Remember the square and the square root and the square cancel out, leaving back 2x minus 3. And this is going to be equal to what? This is going to be equal to plus or minus the square root of -4 times the square root of 3, right? And the square root of -4 is what? 2 what? 2i, right? So then I have 2x minus 3 is equal to plus or minus 2i square root 3. And then after that, just solve for x, right? We're going to add 3 over here. What we do to one side, we do to the other. So now I have 2x is equal to 3 plus or minus 2i square root 3. And then after that, just divide by 2. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. So x is equal to 3 plus or minus 2i square root 3, all divided by 2. Questions on that? Yep, that's the final answer. You can break it up into 2 different answers if you want, one being 3 minus 2i square root 3 over 2, and the other one being 3 plus 2i square root 3 over 2. Or you can combine them like that. That's fine. Whatever works for you. Let me just hit it one more time. All right, good to go. So any questions? Make sense? Awesome, awesome. All right. You guys try. Yeah. So yeah, over the weekend, try to catch up on your homework, everyone. Only got this weekend and then the final, right? So we want to catch up on our homework as quick as possible. Next week will be the last bit of homework. It's something different. I was about to post half of next week's homework today, but I was like, wait till next week. I know y'all got to catch up anyway, so. Could be it. Start your homework.
So,
Stuck on the homework? For real?
not going to.
Okay. So just use the same technique and do it. Put the 25 on the other side and square root both sides, and that's it. I means imaginary. So basically, like, we're not dealing with like real numbers, like. All right, let's take a look, right? So I want to solve for r in this equation, right? But it's 3r plus 4 squared is equal to -8. I want to get rid of that square term, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to square root it. But what I do to one side of the equation, I have to do that to the other side of the equation, right? The square root and the square will cancel out, leaving back just 3r plus 4 is equal to plus or minus, and then square root of -8 is going to get broken down into square root of -4 times square root of 2, right? And then help me out. What's the square root of -4? 2i, right? So this becomes 3r plus 4 is equal to plus or minus 2i square root 2. And then now I just want to solve for r, right? So I'm going to subtract 4 over here. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So now I have 3r is equal to -4 plus or minus 2i square root 2. And then I just want to divide by 3. What I do to one side, I got to do to the other, right? It's that simple. So r is equal to -4 plus or minus 2i square root 2 all over 3. Yay. All right. Any questions on this? Oops. Let me just hit it one more time. We're good to go. Whoops. No problem. Why did I put the I? The I is the -1, right? So you see, right. So the square root of -1 is I, right? And you see how I have square root of -4? So that's actually like square root -1 times square root 4. So square root -1 becomes the I, square root of 4 is just the 2. So that's how I get the 2i. Yeah. Yeah. Just watch the recording. It's all there. Yes, it is. Yeah. Today, yeah. Gotcha. So yeah, the recordings are all up. You guys can watch. All right. So next week, test 3 on Thursday. All right. So it should be good. All right. I'll probably give y'all the review sheet. I'll give it to y'all like on Monday or Tuesday, one of the 2 days, maybe Tuesday. But it's all of this that we've done. So these square roots, these radicals, these powers, that stuff. That's it. You too. Is everybody done with this? Can I take this down, or is anybody still copying? Good. So I'm gonna stop the recording. So everybody that's listening online, have a good night. See y'all. See y'all next week. Have a great weekend.